And so God is calling his people to not simply be consumers. Not saying you can't consume culture. What I'm saying is that God has created in you, and you were made in the image of God. In Imago Dei, like you were made in God's image, and one of the things that we are to do in reflecting God is to be a creator and a cultivator. God is a creator. He created us. He is the creator, and we reflect him through creating culture. What kind of culture do we create? We create heaven's culture here on earth. We help others see, and I'm not saying we own the city like you would, like God owns heaven. What I'm saying is that through the church, we are to reflect what the kingdom of heaven looks like, because we live our lives according to God's rules, in God's will, in God's way, not according to the way of the city. We help the city see who God is. And one of the ways we do that is by creating culture, reflecting God in our creation of culture. Historically, throughout the entire world, some of the best features of art or even architecture historically happened after Christianity spread throughout the world. Christians were creating good art. They're creating great, their architecture was great. You see this in historic cathedrals, and then also through painting, visual art, through music. God's people historically have led the way, really up until the American experiment, the latter half of what is now the American experiment, has led the way in creating culture. Today, Christians are not the chief culture creators. We're not. And you're wondering, why the world is what it is. I think we stopped doing this. When God said, go in, build houses, live in them, that means when you live in them, you would actually know your neighbor, you would create relationships with those in your sphere of influence in your life. You would help them see the God of the Bible. You know who started hospitals? Christians. So it's like they saw a need in their community and they said, hey, you know what? People need health care. You know what we're going to do? We're going to provide for it. We live in a world that wants to debate about health care but doesn't want to help anyone in any way. What about your neighbor? I don't care how you voted, but have you cared for your neighbor? Just ask, no. You're like, I haven't. Well, who cares how you vote? I really don't. God doesn't. He's saying, hey, build houses, live in them, create culture, plant gardens, eat their produce. You know, you created a garden in this time. Your neighbor needed food. Guess what you could do? You could share. You could help them. But we live in a world that is so selfish, so self-absorbed, that's so consumeristic that we don't know how to be a blessing to the city or those around us because we've not seen the opportunities God's given us. And so many people right now are fleeing certain cities, and you'll hear about it. You're on the news, you listen. They're like, everyone's leaving, California. They're coming to Texas. Make sure you don't bring your politics, whatever. Here's the deal. Here's what I'll say. Please don't bring your consumeristic Christianity. We don't need more of that. I don't care what state you live in. God's called you to be a missionary. I think it's funny that everyone's leaving. They're going, I don't like this city. God, what do you think these people thought? I don't live in the city. Babylon, I want to go back home. And God said, hey, sit down, son. Live here, build a house, start a family we're going to see, make culture, don't leave. I'm not saying some people are leaving because they're financially, they need to leave. But when you come to a new city, some of you are new to San Antonio, God has called you to not be a consumer here. We'll need more consumers. If you're a Christian, we need more missionaries. People who are filled with the Spirit of God, who want to herald the good news of God, so that a people can meet their God, be transformed, their lives forever changed. And actually from there is where we start encountering real people. We see real needs, and we go, you know what? Can we create something to be a blessing to them and not just see people as a means to consume?